and now it's just the sheep and the wind.
The sheep and the wind. Wow. Wow.
They're building the interior of the Golden Hall, which was done in the studio back in Wellington.
The Golden Hall interior set was a 360-degree set that filled up our largest stage, Stage A.
Tolkien, in his description of the place, set a very high standard and given us something to aim for.
The travellers perceived that the floor was paved with stones of many hues. They saw now that the pillars were richly carved, gleaming dully with gold and half-seen colours.
Gleaming dully.
Many woven cloths were hung upon the walls, and over their wide spaces marched figures of ancient legend.
Alan's drawings had a lot of detail in the carved into the big timber posts that went down the hall. Wow. And of course the throne was at the far end.
Just everything was elaborate, and even the tiles.
The design of the floor was such a fluid kind of lines going through it.
We produced a lot of very ornate furniture and fixtures and fittings. But probably the most important of these was going to be Theoden's throne, because we knew that there would be close-ups of Bernard.
The throne was a really nice prop, so we did a full-on furniture making and wood carving job on that.
We had a wonderful carpenter at the time who was really keen on actually carving as much of the throne as possible. And there were other decorative details as well. There was two little figures that my daughter actually sculpted and stuck onto the back of the seat.
We had an idea to do a series of tapestries all the way around the walls of the Golden Hall.
We had a soft prop workshop. We made banners and cushions and rugs and bedspreads and curtains. You name it, we made it.
Okay.
We wanted to try to get the feeling in the banners that there's not just one Rohan culture, that there are these other divisions, and they're represented by having their banners.
Wow.
These banners are made from hand-dyed wool. Our head textilist is Leslie Templeton, and she did most of the handwork and embroidery on these.
The tapestry was quite a big job. I mean, obviously they all had to be illustrated up first and very carefully painted on. So we had a team of painters doing this illustrating job essentially onto very heavy canvas.
I actually found it hard to keep off the set. I would keep wandering down and loitering because it felt just like a real Viking or Anglo-Saxon.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
A very beautiful area of Central Otago called Pulburn Lakes was where we based the Rohan village that gets attacked by the wild men. And what I wanted was a huge vista. You could have a massive landscape and you could have these tiny little specks of people running and just see these little dots.
Pulburn itself was a dam that was built by the gold miners.
It's remote, but there's a few fishermen's huts there. They're like little batches, little cottages just kind of on the shores of the lake.
One of the challenges was figuring out a way to disguise those.
My face looks so serious. Oh my goodness.
A very convenient way was to make them into Rohan huts.
So we built all these wonderful little Rohan thatched and stonework structures.
That got a little bit more complicated when we decided we were going to burn the village down.
It was one of those one-offs. You burn this once, you can't rebuild it. Once the flames really get going, it's going to thatch on fire. And
remember that time they had that avalanche and it was like, cut, all right, let's do it again? Like, what? We got to put all this stuff back? So when you do this is it.
Kind of swept around towards the camera, and the camera crew actually just turned and ran.
Yikes. Yeah, that's too much.
But what had happened was the two guys on the camera had sort of suddenly smelt smoke and smelt their hair starting to catch on fire and taken off.
Why are we laughing at that?
And left it there.
Hair catching on fire?
I think, and we had one take. Thank goodness we had multiple cameras out there.
That was crazy because, that's it. You do that, there's no more set.
The whole set's burnt down.
Ain't no take two.
He's the safety guy.
Yeah, he's doing a bad job.
We're safe the whole time.
Yep. He's the safety guy. Oh, that was good. That was so good to see. I'm glad they included that.
Sort of
everybody took off running.
It's not a sinister forest,
Very
but it's not
realistic.
exactly friendly either.
It's like, we're glad the
Sort
cameras
of a
are
forest
going.
that minds its own business.
Alan Lee had actually done some great paintings of it, looking kind of wonderfully gnarly, mangled, creepy-looking
I'm still tripping
forest.
off of the train.
We
going
thought
through
we'd be
the
able to
marshes.
find a real forest. You know, New Zealand's got wonderful trees and forests, and we
That
hunted
tickled me
all over
to
the country
death.
and could never find something that really felt like Fangorn. We decided, and it was a sort of a reluctant decision because we knew it was going to create an enormous amount of headaches for us, but we decided Fangorn was not going to be shot on location.
The design of this, the main Fangorn set, was really kind of coming up with the most kind of convenient way of being in the middle of a forest and being able to shoot off it without ever feeling we were in the studios.
I worked with John Howe and Alan Lee a lot.
You guys gonna pull it off.
They would give you a brief sketch which gave you the feeling of what you were trying to achieve.
Brian Massey's the tree man. He's what I call a tree hugger.
The tree man. Oh, the tree hugger.
Quite a bit of tree felling for a long time.
Yeah.
And then moved into arborism, or being a tree surgeon. And even though at times it may be your job to
I
take
love
a tree
that.
down,
You're a tree surgeon.
that doesn't mean you have any less feeling for them.
Oh, look
And
at you.
there's no doubt that if you want to build trees, you have to be really familiar with the way they're put together.
Yeah.
Very early on in the piece, he had a team of about a dozen people working on.
This is just opening my eyes to so much.
During film 1, we started
Tree surgeon. I didn't even. Of course, they have people who take care of the trees.
Build them. Some of them would start to look a little bit
things you don't even think about.
symmetrical or not quite organic enough.
He just got frustrated with chippies, as he calls us, building trees, because chippies like to build, quite straight and square.
I tried talking to a few people.
Chippies.
Made a little bit of progress, but it still wasn't looking quite right. So I thought I'd put out a pamphlet for them.
I've got one somewhere. I haven't got it here now.
You gave him a pamphlet?
This piece of paper was called
Rules about Trees.
I must admit, at the time, it was greeted with much yelling and mirth and that. But ever since, it's been referred to by a lot of the construction department. And it
He was like, listen, y'all need some instructions. You need a pamphlet.
That's how we start off. And we'll also use real branches.
Every sort of month or so, he would take his truck up with a chainsaw and a few of his guys, and they'd go beachcombing and find the best shapes.
Wow.
Well, these trees needed to have character. They needed to feel like they were old men, arthritic old men. So
I just
Brian's
can't even get
team
over
wanted
it.
to begin by very carefully dissecting the tree trunk into various different parts.
They
and these
have
structures
to
were taken to the
pay
studio and
all of these
wrapped around
people to
big
do all of this
steel
stuff,
frames,
like-
which our steel department had made.
We went to the local botanical gardens and asked if we could collect their leaves, and they thought we
Outrageous.
were crazy. We'd fill up all these great big wool sacks full of leaves and take them away, cart them away, and stash them very carefully.
The most enjoyable thing is after you've spent 6 weeks building a forest in a studio is the last night you run around putting the mosses and the lichen, and then you turn the water on and suddenly it comes to life.
Yeah.
If you've done your job, the crew should forget that they're in the studio. And some of
Hello.
them do
Yes.
that.
How can you not if you've
Really,
done
it's a
your
great
job? Look at this.
You see them resting with their back against the tree.
I
And they're
just
actually
love it.
causing a bit of mayhem, but it's obvious they feel very comfortable there.
We built Fangorn Forest 8 times.
It's
But
like
Brian,
each person.
who is
It's
sort
like
of
a
an
salaried person because they're there for like, I guess, a
always,
year. So
you
you're
know, I
paying
get to
thousands
build
of
Fangorn Forest,
tens
it'd
of
be
thousands of
great.
dollars
I
per
can make it
person
better.
to get all the
It's real
stuff done.
moss on the ground. It's real earth.
It's amazing.
And something I found was I could never find the exit in these places because you get used to it being one way and you think, well, I know where the exit is. If I just go up to that big tree and take a left.
Oh, he
that'll
said
take
it.
me
Oh,
into the
exits.
canteen.
That's what he's. Okay.
And then they change it and I'm like,
Oh, he doesn't know how to get
I don't know
out.
where the door is. I don't actually know how to get out of this place.
Yeah, it definitely looks so realistic and looks so big on screen, you know?
Where Faramir's group of people have a kind of a hideout, if you like. We wanted to develop a look that made them look like rangers.
Mm-hmm.
So although this cave was kind of a hideaway, it's also a base of operations for them, so it had to have a certain amount of dressing.
Henneth Annun did only have a few very basic props like barrels and a few weapons, but it's complicated in the building because a lot of those rock sets, there's way more work in them than you ever imagine.
We built up basically from the studio floor.
Okay.
We combined
waterfall in the Forbidden Pool with the caves, really in the interests of saving time and energy with the manufacture of the waterfall itself, which was the most complex part of the build. So it ended up being a very high set.
Oh.
When we make a waterfall, there's a real art to sealing it and making sure
can only
that
imagine.
The water just doesn't go everywhere.
Of course, it's an art form.
Of course,
yeah.
Things did get a bit wet, actually.
A
there
little
was no
bit.
way around it.
Yeah.
And actually, as it happens, we had painted the bottom of the pool quite dark to make it feel quite deep.
Okay.
But acrylic paint usually has detergents in it. And as flowing water comes in contact with paint, it would look like a bubble bath. So we had to put in these chemicals into the water to stop this foaming.
Once it's in
Oh
the
my
film,
goodness.
the only thing that you see that
They
doesn't
thought of
look
everything,
like
didn't they?
And it isn't, because it's all digital, is the actual view, the moonset over the Ithilien,
I
which
guess
is
it would
an
have to be
extraordinary
digital,
thing
right?
to look at. It's beautiful.
We go to great pains in trying to work out what we should be seeing as far as the moon goes. Is it a full
They
moon?
did
Is it a
so
half
good,
moon?
and this was like
And that
20
type
years
of
ago with the
information,
CGI.
is available
Come
from
on,
Tolkien.
we gotta give it up.
So it's true to the book.
Because it still holds even to this day.
Osgiliath is
That was interesting how they
ruined
made that waterfall, though.
City by Minister.
And it's like you've hired a team of people who knows, who've done it before, something similar, maybe not on that scale, but they know what they're doing. So they even knew to get the chemicals to keep it from foaming, you know.
Gondor, which had long been
very
disputed between the Gondorians and Sauron, and then had been left and fallen into neglect and been burnt and ruined.
Mm-hmm.
Alan did the aerial kind of shot, wide shot of that. And I remember walking into a studio one afternoon, and he was putting the finishing touches on this drawing that I hadn't seen that morning. He had drawn it in a day.
Given its size as described in the book, we were never going to have enough money to build the entire thing. And so we had to restrict ourselves to a few areas. And Alan's concept had a bridge, a big broken bridge that was a big feature in our set. So we began by building that.
We wanted it to feel like you were entering Berlin 1945. It's pretty frightening. It's not really a place you want to spend too much time in.
Through the shoot up to that point, we had saved a huge amount of scenery for the specific purpose of building Osgiliath, because Osgiliath, after all, has been ruined.
So as you walked through the sort of the city blocks, you could recognise bits of, halls and, and previous things that you'd filmed. It was just extremely skillfully put together by the art department.
That gap through there will have
wow.
hall filling it.
We were able to add to the scenery we had by making it broken and feel cracked, and like grasses were growing out of cracks.
What I found interesting was, because we had the opportunity of having a wet set there, we also had the opportunity of having the idea of the city feeling as though it was partially flooded and the waters had risen. Had just kind of stolen over the edges of the city. And maybe the city has started to sink in places as well.
All the mountains that you see, all the skies, it was all painting. So but we want to see how vulnerable it actually is and how close it is to Mount Doom. And that sets the scene for later on in film 3, where we revisit it again.
In the end, it all felt as though it was one part of one cohesive Gondorian environment.
Wow.
There's this great piece of Alan Lee art that was done for the book about 10 years ago, which he did Helm's Deep, and it was kind of like you look at that and think, wow, imagine seeing that in the film. And that's what I thought when I saw the painting, and so I always had it in my mind that Helm's Deep has got to look as good as that painting. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. If we can't get to the standard of that painting, why should we bother?
Wow.
The very first thing that I got involved with when I started on this project in January 98 was the drawings for Helm's Deep. I was trying to keep as close as possible to Tolkien's description and the kind of topography that he outlines. So we worked on designs for this, which is essentially a valley with towering crags on either side and the deeping wall which stretches from one side to the other.
It's
and
just
protects the
breathtaking.
people who are sheltering the valley from whatever is coming their way.
The only thing that we changed from that painting was a suggestion of John Howell's, because he said if this was really a defensive position, the wall would curve inwards so that at any point in the wall, archers could cover any attackers from any length of the wall. So that was the one fundamental sort of change that we made.
A lot of those things like castle-y type sets We don't have castles in New Zealand. I mean, there may be a couple, but we don't generally have them. So we have to build everything.
When we started talking
we don't
about
have castles
filming
just laying
Helm
around.
Street, we had this
We have
idea
to build them.
of filming it at Stone Street. And I started thinking about it. First of all, you're in a neighborhood. You're going to film all night there. We're going to make a racket.
Oh, it's a
We're
neighborhood?
not going to be very popular with the neighbors.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's really not big enough for the scale and scope of a set we wanted to build. So we started searching, and then someone came up with the idea to build this as a quarry right outside of Wellington.
The advantage of filming the quarry was it gave the art department an opportunity to build those sets into existing rock structures.
Okay.
You could actually build all the way up to a rocky face, and you wouldn't actually have to build that rock then. It already existed.
Yeah.
We resolved fairly early on that we'd build it in 5 separate elements just to make it possible to film it.
We want the height to be a safe operating height that we can have 30 extras all bundled up there trying to bust the door down, and they're not going to kill themselves if they fall off the edges.
So we got a team of hardy builders out there and started building it.
The first sort of 2 or 3 months there was literally 2 big bulldozers moving, I don't know how many cubic meters.
Outrageous.
I think we had over 800
The audacity
square concrete blocks
to just say, this is what I'm going to do.
Scaffolding on top of that.
My goodness.
They weigh something like 2 ton each.
We're building sections of it.
And this is like, they're doing this in all these different locations and on all these different sound stages, right?
The top of the set in there, it's got about half the size of a rugby field.
That part was the Hornburg set. So basically, that upper level
warehouses full of bicatures. So you really,
rushes in.
They are really showing just how many people they employed in order to make this happen.
Carving out. The faces that we're seeing are effectively going to be the front faces of the castle.
We had the main causeway
that the people who funded this,
of the castle itself. So you could actually shoot people going through the front door and actually get the wall they would walk into if they didn't go left or right. And of course, we then built the ramp going up to the left, which you could actually get horses up and down on.
You had to build in the ramps and just everything. You had to really think about everything
in the quarry, which
was beforehand.
The scale miniature of Helm's Deep.
Funny to think of it as a miniature, but it was quite large. It was big enough to be able to sort of crawl around through and build, and it was pretty amazing.
Wow.
And then there's a ledge up on the top there that you can see where it's like a little table. We're actually cutting a stairway directly out of that, so we're going to build the set directly into the rock.
And in fact, those stairs were cut step by step.
And they're like out there in the midst of working and filming the behind the scenes, and they're speaking, like just so happily. Like they're just so delighted to share their roles,
We had a section that could blow away once the explosion occurred, and we could actually then shoot action on either side of the wall.
It's almost as if the tower itself forms part of the instrument, which would strike fear into the hearts of even the fiercest enemies.
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien describes Helm's Deep as being made by the ancient sea kings, and how people had thought that they must have been giants because of the size of the blocks that we used.
Okay.
I think our art department crew really became incredibly talented at carving the styrofoam blocks in front of the wood structure in such a way to give it that rough, rock-hewn look that had been, that survived centuries.
For people who didn't know that they were making a movie, it must have been the weirdest thing in the world. That, you're driving along this motorway and everything looked very New Zealand. And then you look up and there's this sort of, British castle. Where did that come from kind of thing?
Right.
And then we came to the battering ram. This is a good one because not only did it have to look good, but it had to physically smash the front door down.
Okay.
We built a battering ram for Helm's Deep, and normally you think, okay, you're going to have a battering ram in a movie. It's going to be a movie prop. You probably send 2 guys to pick this thing up. But just to transport it out to Dry Creek Quarry where we were filming was a major undertaking. This thing was a real battering ram.
The battering ram was really heavy.
Why would you
do that? They would tell us.
You didn't have to do that.
To do the battering ram with the door. That okay, I want you to try and smash this door down. It's not reinforced at all. I want you to just run back and run towards it.
You didn't need to make it that heavy. That's so crazy.
John Mahaffey would say,
"It's a movie.
You guys are pussies, man. You hit like elves." And we're like, right. And we went to smash that door down. nothing would happen. So we take it back and bang.
You see all those people that had to use in order to lift it.
Or something. Bang.
What?
We tried and tried and tried.
Did he say Arwen or
like,
something?
Oh man, this thing won't even move. They wouldn't even put holes in the door.
Somebody else in the art department decided, God, I mean, my door that I'm building has to stand up against that thing. God, I better make this pretty strong.
Okay.
But of course, they overbuilt it.
That is outrageous. That first of all, the battering ram is just too much, and then the door itself is too much.
If we were defending a castle, I'd want our art department building our front door because they did a hell of a good job.
Yeah.
Everyone
that
extended themselves to fulfill this vision, and
I love
when
that.
You're doing so much, making 3 films all
they
at
were
once,
just, that's how far, just
shooting,
far and beyond
we know exactly what
the Call of Duty that they went to, where the battering ram was real,
like,
and the door
okay,
guarding it was real.
No. Come on, get it right.
Even though we knew it was going to be big, nobody could see how big it was going to be, and you couldn't actually
you know it was going to be big,
think too far ahead because it was overwhelming.
I thought, how on earth are we going to get through all this? How on earth can we do it for the money? How on earth can we do it in the time frame that had been allowed for? And it just seemed, insurmountable.
It was just too daunting of a task, quite frankly. You had to be delusional and audacious in order to pull this off, and they were.
What the art department did, the design of the places itself, was so instrumental in us getting lost in the story.
Yeah. There was such an exchange of information. I really very sincerely feel that I've never worked with a crew of people like that in my life.
I mean, I think personally, you can put this on tape, and 3'6" should send us all to therapy after this. One day, somebody's going to come to me and say, "You've finished," and I don't know what my brain's going to do at that stage. I think I'm just probably going to slight shock.
Yeah.
Think, what am I going to do now?
Yeah. Okay.
A remarkable experience, really, to be able to.
He just looks like he's in heaven
models
every time he's on screen.
Come here and see it all made real. It's been wonderful.
That was wonderful. Was that it? Oh, dang. I don't have time to watch another one because the other one is like 45 minutes long too. But oh, that was so good. Yeah, so I'm going to stop it here. Yeah, Weta Workshop is next, and that's 43 minutes and 50 seconds. So I'm going to stop this here and continue along on some other day because I had to get up really early in order to watch these for you guys. But that, and for myself, of course. That was so good, I have to say. I really put my finger on it, why I'm just so tapped in and tuned into this documentary is when they had Alan Lee on the plane and was he was taking pictures and just kind of excited about scoping out the new location, and I felt like I was there, and it's like that feeling of living vicariously through someone else's eyes. And they do that a lot in this documentary by allowing us to follow the people along, and it fills me up. It just warms my heart and it tickles me. I feel like I'm a part of the cast. And I think that this whole documentary, if the people would take the time to watch it, would just, it really makes you fall in love with the whole Lord of the Rings experience even more. Like, seriously, this has really changed the way that I feel, like the depth of how I feel about the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Rings, and now we're on the Two Towers. Like, it just changes everything, just knowing about the process. For whatever reason, them showing me the clip of the train going through while they were filming during the marshes, that like tickled me so much. And it just just knowing that, all of these different challenges that they face, and they like overcome them just like a champ every time. Just whatever the life situations were thrown at them, because life is gonna do life. Whatever was being thrown at them, they always had like a counter move, and they just kept it going. Just like he was saying about the challenges of the money. Like, I'm sitting there adding all this up in my head as I'm watching it because the scope of it is just magnificent. And, they showed a little bit of it in the Fellowship of the Ring, but just showing like they had to build the whole set around a mountain, around a location, and then they had to call the money guys and like, listen, we're gonna need money to do this. And then they had these big dump trucks out there. They got to like literally construct it. And so all of that takes money. It takes money to get all the materials, and it takes money to get all the vehicles, and it takes money to get all of the people. So I'm like adding stuff because, you know, people, it's like these people are working on this. I don't know if they're hourly, they might be salaried, but you're paying tens of thousands of dollars per person in order to get, because they're working full time. I'm assuming, right? Just full time. So I don't even know. 300 million might not have even been enough, but someone did say that where they were filming, and it was 20 years ago. So just imagine all of that. So they managed to pull it off. And not only did they manage to pull it off, it's like they far exceeded the expectations of the times, I would think. You know, because everything looks so realistic. I would not have even suspected for a moment that those rocks were not real, that the rocks were like foam and on wheels. It's just too impressive for words. It really is. And the behind the scenes, whoever is pulling this off and piecing all of this footage together is doing an exceptional job, because they have the music playing in the background, and they choose the right clips, and they have the clips that are going for just the right amount of time before they move on to something else. And it's just really so powerful, so creative, so impactful, and so entertaining. You know, it really is. I can't stress that enough. I can't even wait to get into the Weta Workshop. So I'll be back within a few days to record myself watching that. Okay. All right, you guys, thank you for joining me yet again as I continue this journey behind the scenes for the Two Towers. I didn't even go into like Helm's Deep and what they, you know, all of this, you know, everything that they are creating. It's just so amazing to me. Thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you guys next time. Okay, until next time, let's flow.